Hey, family, and welcome to Empowered Voices, the podcast where we delve into real life experiences that Black women face in the workforce. Today, we're taking a topic that takes a unique dimension for Black women. It is imposter syndrome and how, specifically for us as Black women, it takes a toll on our mental health. So get ready for an impactful conversation with a thought leader and certified psychotherapist. Keep watching so you can glean your wisdom today. Hi, and welcome back to the show. Voices Empowered, a podcast designed to empower, educate, and equip Black women. This platform is really used to amplify the voices of Black women in the workforce. We emphasize this because we want to help the next generation to give them tools and resources to thrive. I'm so excited that you're joining me for this empowering message because today we have a thought leader on the show again, Cassandra Francis. She is a registered psychotherapist, founder and CEO of One Piece Therapy. So think of me as your chief encouragement officer, getting you ready to be inspired and empowered as we delve deeper into the topic of how imposter syndrome can affect a Black woman's mental well-being. Welcome to the show, Cassandra.
Thank you, Edna. It's honestly a pleasure to be back, especially in Black History, Black Excellence Month.
Yes, Black Excellence Month. I love that. And we're
Yeah.
super excited to have you again. Last time you shared some really wonderful resources and tools and tips with us and your wisdom. And we're looking forward to gleaning some gold nuggets this time as well.
Yeah.
So let's just jump right on in. I'm going to just ask the question. So we're talking about how imposter syndrome can really affect your mental state as a woman of color or Black woman. So how does it manifest differently for Black women in the workplace compared to other groups?
That's a great question. And it has so many pieces to it, right? Because as Black women, we're not only talking about the color of our skin, but also the fact that we are women.
Mm.
So the intersectionality of these two crucial parts of our identity that is visible, right? We can't, let me say we can't hide that we're Black. Well, we can't hide that we're Black. We can't,
When you walk in the room, you cannot hide your
you
color.
can't hide that you're Black. You can't hide that you're a woman. So, how you show up, it's immediately there is perceived perception,
Right.
right? Especially depending on the room you're walking in, there's perceived perception of, okay, this is what this Black woman is going to come in.
Mm.
So considering those two things that unfortunately, societal wise, systemic wise, they're not the highest ranking, right? That is often internalized by Black women,
Mm.
especially in the workforce, because now in the corporate world, that space is predominantly white people, right? White men, sometimes white women.
Mhm.
So how do you engage with your identity, knowing that there's going to be a level, whether it's implicit or explicit, there's a level of perception. So balancing that, it impacts someone. You can't hide, your identity in that way. So navigating that space that clearly you're qualified to be in, but systemic and societal expectations make you question how qualified you really are.
Yes, and thanks for that answer. I was talking with another person that was on the show, and
Mhm.
just the whole fact of having to deal with that on a day-to-day basis, right? It could really not only affect your mental, it affects the way you show up at work with what you're doing and how you're doing it. So it always feels like you're never doing enough. Not even if you gotten all the credentials, you worked really hard, you got the project has been completed, excellent project, you've done it. And I do this and I'll be like, what else can I do? It's like
Yeah,
there's nothing else to do. You've done it.
exactly,
It's like we hold
exactly.
ourselves to a higher standard because I always felt like Black women have had to do that. Like that, they
Exactly.
say the Black tax, but then there's the extra tax of Black
Mm.
women.
It's true. It's true. And it's true, right? Sometimes it seems like, oh, this is just how we speak. This is just, colloquial. No, it's a fact that unfortunately Black women do have to work harder. I even heard, I have clients that they're at like the highest ranked position of their field, right? But when they got there, they're just like, this is it. Like,
Right.
this is what so it feels anticlimactic because you had to work so hard to get there. It's like, this
Right.
is what I worked hard to get. Like, I don't even like this.
Right. Or
Right?
it's okay. Right. It's like,
Right.
oh, this is just what it is. But in your mind, you make it up. I think it's the build up,
Yeah.
and
Exactly. Oh, definitely the build up. Definitely the build
I
up.
get there.
Uh,
So I think
yeah.
too, shifting gears a little bit about the stereotypes and microaggressions that Black women often are have this, they face a unique stereotype where we're looking
Yes.
at the strong Black woman or the angry Black woman, depending on how we respond. And those microaggressions that really have create those feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt. I think sometimes these experiences can make us question our abilities and accomplishments, contributing to imposter syndrome. In addition to that, is now affecting us physically, because now you're mentally and your physical, all of that is tied together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what are some of the things that maybe from your expertise and your level of how you work with your clients, what would be some advice to share with Black women in terms of handling those microaggressions and kind of stopping those feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt?
That's a big question, Edna. That's a whole therapy session
Oh
worth.
my goodness. Can we get a mini therapy session?
Yes, it's true.
Mini,
It's true.
like, where do you even start? It's like so much to unpack there, right? Uh,
Yeah, it
so
is.
just where could someone start? Because I know, and again, this podcast really is for women of color, Black women in specific, because I know that we struggle in certain spaces and places. Um, because we need to know where to start to kind of manage it. Like, okay, yeah,
Right.
if you're going through imposter syndrome right now, what does that feel like? Okay, we now know that. So how do you manage it? Like, how do you
Right.
get back to your normal state of being so you can get back to what you were called to do?
Yes, yes. Well, honestly, one of them is seeking out a therapist.
Mhm. Okay.
Right. I'm laughing, but it's actually very serious.
Right.
It helps to be guided through the process of how do you understand yourself again when, there's so many factors that has taken you away from self. Because I'm sure as Black women, we know concretely that we put in the work to be in whatever position we're in,
Mhm.
right? But in that journey, it can also be quite easy to lose yourself. So I always, of course, as a therapist, I encourage people seeking out their own therapists, as well as even me having my own.
Yeah.
It's so crucial.
Mhm.
Ultimately, though, that journey is you getting back to self,
Yeah.
right? So that's a huge coping, whatever helps you get back to self. Talking to friends, visiting maybe positive, nostalgic moments, self-care
Mhm.
as well. I forgot to share, I am doing a webinar actually next Tuesday, February 11th. I'll be doing a webinar talking about self-care, self-love, and Black resilience.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, so knowing how to take care of yourself can also help have that protective barrier of other people's perceptions, microaggressions,
Mhm.
expectations, all the things that, again, can create fear, self-doubt. Um, and just ultimately building that resilience,
Yeah.
right? Because unfortunately, we can't avoid people. We
Yes,
can't avoid
look, people
people.
are everywhere. They're everywhere.
People, people are everywhere. If it's not work, it's at the
You know,
grocery
more than,
store.
you can work behind your computer, but you still got to deal with people eventually if you're working.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. If it's not managers, it's customers, it's client, it's
right.
possible. Across time, you will face these things. So having the resilience to get through it, which is sometimes people can do it on their own, sometimes they need support, right?
Yes.
And then they can do it on their own.
I think that that's a good point, in terms of seeking out a therapist. But in addition to that, I think, from a workforce perspective, Black women need to rally. which means they
Yeah,
need to support one
yeah,
another, because when you start to talk and you start to find out you're not the only one feeling that way,
yeah,
then you don't feel so isolated and by yourself. Like, I'm the only one
definitely.
going through this. You don't know that unless you're connecting with other women.
Exactly,
Mm.
exactly. And I find that, ultimately we do know that we experience similar experiences,
Mhm.
right? Which is why we can have these conversations of this vulnerability and be like, yes, I know, if not now, I knew that then,
Right.
right? But sometimes when we're in the environment it's happening and it can become like completely out of our mind that, okay, I'm actually not the only one because we
Right.
become so consumed in our workspace that it feels like you are,
Yeah.
um, which can lead to many different mental health concerns, such as depression or,
Mhm.
anxiety, burnout,
Right.
identity loss. Like there's so much things that can happen in isolation. So absolutely building a community in your workplace, hoping that there is at least one other melanated person there.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
I think we had this conversation before. You've been the only one. Sometimes I've been the only one. I think I know that
Yeah.
the way I grew up, we grew up, it was very my whole neighborhood was black, but when we went to school, it was everybody. And we
Mm,
never, race for us was, as I was a kid, it wasn't like we didn't make a big stink about it. We just all played together. But it's when you get older, right? And you get in
right.
work environments and you have to navigate this thing. That's where I think a lot of the struggle comes from. Just
Mm,
understanding who you are and what you bring is important
yeah.
as a Black woman. But you just mentioned, you can lose yourself, your identity in that, trying to be someone you're not, or trying
Yeah.
to act a way that you're really not.
Right.
So I do think it's certainly it's something to consider if you're feeling that way, to reach out to someone who can give you that kind of help, like yourself or
Yeah.
so that's important. I feel that very strongly. So for Black women too, how might that intersection of gender and race contribute to and exacerbate the feelings of what unique mental wellness challenges might arise from our experiences? Because it's unique
Mhm.
to what's happening to us. So,
Mhm.
what are some of the things that you see that attribute to Black women in that wellness challenge? Trying to
Mhm.
kind of get over that hump.
Yes, I think, what it really targets is identity.
Mm,
Right. I know we're talking about imposter syndrome at work and all the things, but it really does go back to self because there's, again, two major parts of our identity, being a woman, being Black, that is uh I think crucified is a strong word. I'm trying to find another word. Um it they make it seem like it works against us.
yeah.
Right. Instead of it being a moment of strength and reflection of resilience, it seems like a weakness. So I find that identity is often what is triggered, right? Maybe other races, other genders, it could be stress, it could be burnout, sometimes anxiety, right? Which is all valid, and Black women do experience those too, but it's the identity of, okay, who am I? Why am I doing this? How did I get here?
Mhm.
Should I even be here? Having these questions about self.
Yeah.
Sometimes it might even go to changing the appearance of self, right? Okay, so I need to straighten my hair to blend in. I need to speak a certain way. That code switching that we mentioned.
Oh yeah, and that code switching, that's a whole mental shift right there. It's like
Exactly,
coming to two
exactly.
different people. You leave a different person, you come, you walk a different person. So yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So it's really the identity that takes a hit, right? And therefore their relationship with self is not as strong. So it's quite devastating actually to
You mentioned
experience.
too, Cassandra, anxiety, stress, and burnout. Those three key things right there. Um,
Yeah,
can be a result of that impact to your mental wellness, that from that imposter syndrome. Just trying to
yeah,
manage all of that. I mean, that's the end result, really. Those, you go into those types of ways of feeling and being, and sometimes you don't even know you're burnt out.
It's true. It's true. And the signs are usually there. They're always there, actually. The
Yeah.
signs are always there, but it's not
Mhm.
until the burnout becomes like a sickness,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's gastrointestinal concerns or a flu, right? It's then it's like, oh, something is actually not okay. And then we reflect, talk about the workday, you know,
You don't want
starting
to.
and ending there. You know, it's a whole it's a concern, Edna. It really is a concern.
So, what are some of the things that you find too that might be coping mechanisms or to help with mental wellness? Some strategies that you've seen, in addition to what you've already mentioned, that really could hit home for some of the women that may be listening to this podcast because they need to start, like, even with mindfulness and taking a moment to reset,
Yeah.
you know, and I know that I do that, just taking a moment to reset.
Yeah.
Someone asked me, what is that R word again? I was like, oh, it's reset.
Yes.
That's the
Yeah.
word. So would you agree that that's something that we could possibly do as a subtle thing, but it's something that could absolutely be of value when you're trying to, for example, going into a meeting or about to do a presentation, it's kind of reset and
Yes.
ground yourself.
Of course. I think that that would be minimum.
Mm,
Right? It's those small things that can be impactful. So starting with the resetting, I was actually going to share with your question. It's, you know, I think it's important at every moment that the listener gets to check in with how they're spending their time,
right.
right? To reset, whether it's lunchtime, right, before you start work or immediately when you're done work. I think it's crucial to be mindful of how they're taking care of themselves at any point that they get, but also how are they speaking to themselves? Because
Mm,
these voices from perceptions or actuality, they can feel like it's your own voice and therefore you begin to speak that way. So
to yourself. Yeah. Hmm.
exactly. So paying attention how you speak to yourself and what you do during these off work times.
Yeah, that's important. I love that. So make sure you watch your self-talk and your perception. I would also go further to say, Cassandra, that it's important to have affirmations. And I actually say a confidence resume or confidence blueprint where you've written down everything that you've ever done that's amazing, right? And when you
Uh,
start to feel a little like self-doubt, that imposter syndrome starts to creep in, you can whip out your list.
yes.
Start to say, well, that's not true because this happened, and that's not true because I did this, and I learned this on my own, or those types of things, so that you can start to basically self coach yourself to get in a headspace of hitting it hard and moving through it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I completely agree with you, Edna.
There
That's a
are
good one.
there are so many different ways I think that we could kind of manage that.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about if we could possibly think about ways that institutions or organizations can help individuals such as ourselves and be supportive in the inclusive work environment for women, Black women, women of color.
Ooh, that's a big question, a completely different side of psychology, definitely.
Mhm.
Um, but I know just with speaking with my clients in individual and group work, it's always and something we touched on today as well. It's important to have people that look like you in the same environment,
Mhm.
right? So these spaces being inclusive of having people of color. Because sometimes, of course, having another Black person is even more comfort, but sometimes we just need someone else that is a person of color
Mhm.
and that could help, right? So to some degree, it's just having more diversity on their team.
In the organization, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes a
yes.
difference.
Exactly. And speaking to their employees as individuals as well. So not just their identity, like their physical appearance, but there's a reason you hired them. So, act like you know.
Tell
You
me
know
more.
what I mean?
Don't try to change. I always say they hire you for who you are, and then they try to conform you to be what they want you to be. You hired
Mm-hmm.
me for my uniqueness, so don't ask me to come into your organization and be like everybody else.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's just one or two, tips. They can hire me for more tips.
To hire a group of us all together.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Thank
Or the
you for
affinity
that.
groups that you can create at work, having the affinity group
Yeah.
helps. If you can get in an affinity group that's women of color, Black women, or something that's going to give you a sense of identity once you're there, you can connect with other women that look like you. That helps,
Yeah.
I think.
Definitely, definitely. Community. I was sharing with the client recently, I'm like, at each stage of life, we need a community, right? There's that saying, it takes a community to raise a child. It takes a community to deal with work. It takes a
It
community
will work.
to,
I mean, I
you
had
know,
I was talking with one of my so actually she was on the podcast show years ago, and she said to me that she had to get out of corporate America and go
mm,
work at like Whole Foods for healing.
interesting.
People. And I was like, you know what? That is real. That is real because connecting with people in a different way,
Yeah,
on a different level. Because corporations sometimes really put this whole competitive thing out there too. That's the other piece that you're dealing with.
yeah,
But then even if you do see someone that looks like you, they trying to compete against you. You're like, that's just
that
enough
too.
room for
That's true.
everybody to eat. That's make
That's
it
true.
work.
Yes, yes. And I think that's crucial. That's a great point that there's sometimes when you see someone that looks like you, it can be okay, now we have to compete, right? And it's like, oh no, that's not your mentality. That is not the
That's
one
somebody
you want.
else's mentality just being
That's
pushed on
somebody.
you. Yes.
Exactly, exactly. So recognizing the voices that are internalized because yeah, together is strength, right? There's strength in numbers.
Yes.
So absolutely having the community to, even if it's break time is the only time you get to see that person, that will do a whole big deal with resetting,
I
right?
believe that. My
Yeah.
youngest daughter works in an environment where there are several women that look like her, and they bond. They actually go out for happy hour, right?
Mm,
And part of her support team, I call them support team because it is, and she's learning how
yes.
to navigate the whole landscape in corporate America, and she's doing really good at it. And I like that she
For
has
her.
friends outside of the work environment. There are friends outside of that as well, but some of them had left, right? And they still stay connected. And I told her, I said, that is really good because everybody's season and path is different. These young ladies, they have left where she is, they've been there longer than she was. So now she's experiencing certain things and they all can talk together. They call the group Black Excellence.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, she
Yes.
taking pictures. I said, I love that you got a group of women that you could talk with. Just talk.
Yeah.
You're not bashing anybody. You just need somebody to hear you out and be on the same page as you sometimes. That's it.
Yes, that's beautiful. Talking about coping, that's that prime example right there. That's how you remember self,
Yeah,
right? That's
creating that space to be able to get back to yourself.
exactly.
I
Oh, beautiful. Good for her.
Yeah, she's doing well in that, and even last night she just met with one of the young ladies that left and went to another job, but they stay connected. And I was like, that is so good.
Mhm.
I'm glad you
It
guys are doing
is
that, so they can
beautiful.
continue to support one another because they're going to need it.
It's a journey.
It
It's
is.
a journey, right? And unfortunately, I know we're focusing on like corporate America or just the corporate realm in general, but in various spaces,
Yeah,
people can feel like they experience imposter syndrome.
yeah.
So,
Workforce. I think workforce in general. It could be any workplace of work,
okay, yeah.
not just corporate. That just happens to be my background, in
Okay.
corporate. But I would say in the federal government, I saw more people that look like me
Mm,
in leadership roles that I've seen
beautiful.
in the private industry side.
That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And that was many moons ago when I was in the federal government. It was in the 80s and the 90s.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
was actually like,
Beautiful.
blown away. I was like, this is so good. Yeah. So I would always pick
Definitely.
mentors, people who could help me navigate the landscape because they had already done it. So it's also
Yeah,
important to have some people that you can connect with that way as well, that you can kind of pull their coattail and say, hey, I'm looking for a mentor or someone that can sponsor you when you're not in the meeting.
exactly. Exactly. And
Your name
yeah,
coming up, you're like, oh, my name's coming up. It's coming up in a good way, right?
exactly, exactly. And that's a great point. Mentors, even myself, I had a mentor, and she's a Black psychologist.
Mhm.
So rare,
Yeah,
completely rare.
yeah.
So I'm like, oh, as you said, let me pull on your coattail throughout this journey.
Right.
And it's been so rewarding to have her as my mentor. I haven't spoken to her in a while, actually, but she's still there when I need her, and it helps. It tremendously helps. It's just a beautiful coping from start, during, to whatever the end looks like. Yeah, having someone that can help guide or support you if
Yeah.
like a community is hard to access.
So important. So important. This has been an excellent conversation. I appreciate you so much. So you have a event coming up. So could you want to share is that open to the public or is it specific for a
Yeah.
group that you're targeting?
No, so it's open to the public. So the practice I own is called One Piece Therapy. So
Mhm.
every month we offer psychoeducational events. We
Mhm.
talk about mental health and the different aspects of it. So on February 11th at 12 p.m. on YouTube, we will be going live, but we also have the Eventbrite link.
Okay.
Um, Ultimately talking about self-care, self-love, and Black resilience, because we can't forget we're in Black Excellence Month.
Yes.
Uh, but yes, here and in the future, we still need to know how to take care of ourselves.
Always,
So
right, always. Yes.
yeah,
So I will want to get that link for the show notes. So if someone wants to click on it and go to
definitely.
Eventbrite and get registered and that kind of thing, that would be good.
Yes, I'll absolutely send it to you right after.
Awesome, awesome. And is there any you want to share your website with folks? So if someone wants to further the conversation with you or connect with you,
Yes, please visit me or visit us at One Piece Therapy. We do have our Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn. You'll find us. So just
be
searching us.
there.
Yes, One Piece Therapy, and Peace is Peace. As we're happy to support you through your health journey. We also offer nutritional support for those looking to gain access of connecting their physical health and mental health, or focusing on one versus the other.
I
So
love that.
please reach out to us.
Thank you for that. And Cassandra, I appreciate you sharing that information. And it has been a pleasure having you on the show again. And I want to
Definitely.
just thank you for your wisdom and your expertise.
Thank you, Edna. Always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank
You
you.
as well. You're truly inspiring and empowering others around you. So thank you for that and what you do.
Thank you, Edna. Thank you. Thank you, listeners.
Yes, and as we wrap up, if you've enjoyed our time together, remember to share, like, comment, and subscribe to this podcast. It's a new podcast, and we're putting it out there in the universe and wanting everybody to share it with their networks. If you want to connect with me, you can reach me at voemetoday@gmail.com. If you want to learn more about coaching services and resources with Voices of Encouragement, you can reach us on voicesoфencouragement.com on our website. We are empowering minds and transforming lives. And remember, be bold, be true, be kind, be you. And until we meet again, a candle loses nothing by lighting another.